Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are watching or listening to me from. Once again, you are welcome to our class today. Today is the concluding lesson on the treatment of the poem Still I Rise by Maya Angelou. And I'll be looking at some literary devices used by Maya Angelou and their implications to the interpretation and the comprehension of the poem. So if you look on the screen, the first device that I want to look at is repetition. Another name for repetition is refrain. So refrain or repetition. Now before I delve into the poem, repetition as a literary device comes in different forms. We have repetition of sounds where you could have alliterations and assonance. We have repetition of words where you could have anaphora, which is a device I'll treat. But today I'm going to look at repetition of phrases or repetition of words over here. So if you look on the screen, I gave a little explanation to what repetition is and you could look at that. But repetition here simply means the repetition of certain words or phrases to transmit a particular kind of information. So basically, to comprehend a poem completely, you don't have to only look at the words like I did for you the last time in the lesson when I was doing stanza by stanza analysis. Sometimes you have to delve into deeper analysis by looking at some devices used and how the devices could help you get the message of the poet in the exact manner or form that he or she wants you to do it or get it from. So we are going to look at phrases that were repeated, and the main phrase that we'll be talking about today is I rise. So if you cannot remember any part of the poem where this phrase was repeated, you can remember the last stanza when she said, sorry, I rise, I rise, I rise. Now repetition in literature are for emphasis. Repetitions for emphasis simply means that poets or writers use repetition to emphasize a point or to lay emphasis on a point. It's just like you want to tell somebody something. You say it once, you have transmitted your message, but repeating the same thing over and over again is just to draw the person's attention to your seriousness or why you are giving the person that message. So the I rise, I rise, I rise shows strength. No matter how much you keep her down or you try to keep her down, she'll rise. It shows resilience, someone who never gives up, and it shows empowerment. When she made reference to what the ancestors left and how she could rise from the dust, there were different forms of repetition. And all these forms in the poem teaches or emphasizes or brings to bear the kind of things that I mentioned. Strength of a woman like Maya Angelou, of the poet persona. We use poet persona when the poet is the same voice in the poem of the group of people that the poet persona symbolically represents, and also looks at how the oppressors try to suppress, oppress these groups of people, but they never remain on the floor. They still get up. So that is the uh, interpretation you can give to it to understand or comprehend the poem very well. So I wrote finally there that the repetition builds rhythm and emotional intensity. So rhythm has to do with beat. One day I have to teach you how to calculate the rhythm of a poem, where you have the meter. You start talking about the iambic, pentameter, iambic, monometer, iambic, diameter, and the rest. I'll take you to that one day, hopefully. The next device that I want to talk about is called anaphora. And anaphora is also a form of repetition. But unlike the repetition that I looked at earlier, anaphora has to do with the repetition of the same word or a group of words or the same phrase at the beginning of lines in a poem. The repetition I treated earlier may be a form of anaphora because I rise, I rise, I rise. But if you look at the poem, there were different parts where I rise, I will rise, were used as forms of repetition. But when you look at repetition specifically as an anaphora, it must start at the beginning of the sentence or the lines in the poem, and usually it might follow each other, first, second, third line, or first, second line. Then we call it anaphora. So if you look at, let's go back to the poem briefly. Sorry for this. I allow you making textual references. So if you look at the first line, you may write me down in history with your bitter twisted lies. You may. Then the next line says, you may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust I will rise. You may. But the I will rise isn't at the beginning. Like I said earlier, but you may has been repeated over there. And that is all we are referring to as anaphora. Now look at this stanza too. You may shoot me with your words. You may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your hatefulness. So the consistent repetition of the you may, you may, you may, you may is what we are calling anaphora here. And what did this anaphora do? It highlights oppression while showing that none of it can stop her or them from rising. Now, how does it highlight oppression? I want to explain that. Now, you may, as I said in the earlier lesson when I was interpreting the poem, you may is a direct address to the oppressor. You may write me down in history. So you may. It's like something that you think you have done, or something that you have done and you think it will succeed, it will cause me to remain on the ground. So it highlights oppression because she's addressing the one that is oppressing her directly. Thank you for that. Next, we look at rhetorical questions. The least said the better. I wouldn't spend so much time here because this is an obvious literary device that you can look at. You cannot interpret Stella Rice without looking at the rhetorical questions, because she did ask a lot. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? A lot of questions were asked, and these questions, actually some of them shows her confidence, her resilience. It's like everything you have done to her, she's still sassy, she's still bold, she's still confident, and she seems to be ironically amazed that you, I don't mean you my listeners, or if I mean the oppressor, isn't happy that everything done to her, she still stands tall and stands strong. So it shows her confidence. It also exposes insecurity in the oppressor, because the oppressor isn't comfortable with the fact that it has done everything, or he or she or they have done everything to suppress the powers of this woman, to suppress the powers of this poet persona, to suppress the confidence, the gift, and the sassiness of this oppressed, but they weren't successful, so they are insecure because their suppression couldn't achieve what they want. And finally, it creates a confrontational tone. Yeah, you may, the questions asked, confrontation is standing up to someone, or it could mean standing up to someone. So the ability of this persona poet, or the ability of this persona in this poem, to stand up to the oppressor, it's great by asking these questions. So by asking the questions, it tells you the reader that this person is so bold that he could stand up, or she could stand up, or they could stand up to their oppressors. And that's huge. That's something I respect so much as one of the tones in the poem. Now we could talk about simile. Basically, I said in one of my lessons, if you haven't listened to that lesson yet, kindly follow, look for it and listen to it. It's on literary devices. Basically, the the use of simile, or simile simply means comparing two things using like, as, or to an extent so. So he swims like a fish. That is comparing two things, comparing he or him to fish. And what are they comparing? The ability to swim. So, but how did they do the comparison? How did I do the comparison? Using like. Then that qualifies to be simile. And the poem has quite a number of similes. So we have like dust I will rise, like moons and like suns, like air I will rise. So they suggest something that is natural, something that is unstoppable. You could push me, you could force me, you could suppress me to the ground, but like dust, I will rise. So when I tell you like dust, I will rise, you know, when dust settles on the ground, a little force walking past could cause it to rise. So I can never be kept on the ground. I will definitely rise. It also shows inevitability of success. There's no way you can keep me there. And cycles of renewal. It's like cycles of renewal here means that the personal poet is encountering a lot of obstacles, but at the stage or at every stage of this encounter, she rises. So difficulties don't keep her there. She keeps rising. She keeps coming back stronger. She keeps coming back more powerful than she was when you brought her down. So it became cyclical. Metaphor. Simile and metaphor are all two devices that compare things. If you love literature and you read deeply, you might come across the fact that some people refer to simile as a form of metaphor. Metaphor is the umbrella device, and we have simile, we have personifications. That all comes under it. If you don't understand how, I think you should just ask me in the comment section. I can explain to you how personification and simile are all forms of metaphor. So metaphor here is comparing two things without using like or as. That's why I wrote a metaphor is an implied comparison. Implied comparison here simply means that unlike simile where there is a linking verb that compares one part of the sentence to the other, metaphor doesn't have that kind of linking verb or linking word, sorry. So it does the direct comparison. But metaphor could be as simple as a black ocean. So comparing himself to a black ocean using the linking verb am. So I am a black ocean, leaping and wide. The speaker is comparing himself to an ocean that is black. That is simple. Metaphor could also be so complex and so implied that you need deeper understanding of the device to be able to decipher or identify it. So by the speaker comparing herself to an ocean, she's deep, she's powerful, and she's limitless. These are physical features of the ocean. The ocean is deep. It is one very powerful tool that God created, or thing, object, or anything at all. It depends how you look at it, that God created. And it is limitless. It covers the ocean or water bodies in general, covers more space or more land surface than we humans do. So it's limitless. And this symbolizes collective black strength and identity. Like I mentioned to you in the interpretation, at a point her tone shifted from personal to collective, communal, representing a group of people, symbolic, or symbolizing a group of people. Then we have imagery. Imagery. I wouldn't want the lesson to go too far because of the time, but I'll take a little time to give you a little background about imagery. Imagery in poems is when words are used to create images, pictures. Now these pictures could appeal to different sense organs. So we have visual imagery when it appeals to a sense of vision or sight. We have auditory imagery when it appeals to your sense of hearing. We have tactile imagery when it appeals to your sense of taste, touch, sorry, olfactory, gustatory. We have different types of imageries. So in the poem, we have, you may shoot me with your words. This is a violent imagery. And shoot, if there is the sound of the gun, that is auditory, because it appeals to your sense of hearing. Gold mines digging in my own backyard. What imagery? But gold mines could be visual, you could see the goals. Then digging could be auditory. So one sentence or one expression could contain more than one image. Then heart of history, shame, historical suffering. And if the suffering is something you read about, that is visual. If you hear about it, that is auditory. And these images, they create strong emotional impact. It helps you to know her resilience. It helps you to know her, how much she values herself and her ancestral heritage. and it helps you to know that even though the forefathers, the ancestors, went through a lot of dilapidating situations, a lot of uh, ill conditions, she never gave up, or they never gave up. They still rose from that shameful history. And finally, today we look at symbolism. So, imagery could be a form of symbol, but not all symbols could be imagery. I hope I said that right, and I hope you understand me. Imagery and symbolism are connected in a way, sorry, just like simile and metaphor, but they have their own implications for use in a poem. So symbolism here gives you deeper meaning. That symbolism, they you read and they create a symbol. That symbol could be an image or anything, and that symbol is used to help you understand the poem deeper than the surface meaning. So we have dust, which shows resilience; oil wells, gold mines, which shows self-worth and richness; ocean, which shows power and collective identity; rising, which shows freedom, empowerment and liberation. So dust showing resilience. It's like the dust settled and the late thing it rises again. But if you watch it, it settles again after rising, but it doesn't remain there. It keeps coming back. Then oil wells, gold mines, they show that this persona, even though she has been written down in history with twisted lies, she still values her ancestral heritage. She still values and believes herself. And you understand this better if you read a little biography of Maya Angelou, or any of his her autobiography. If you read I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings, you get a little understanding of how she started, what she has to do, and how she ended victoriously, and why she believes so much in herself. So this brings us to the end of today's lesson on literary devices in Still Arise. See you in the next lesson where we'll be looking at She Walks in Beauty by Baron. See you. Bye bye.